Welcome to the 700 Club. President Trump is making it clear he doesn't think the news media is being fair to his administration. He's even calling some of their coverage dishonest.
And while the president was taking on the media, the Senate held its confirmation hearing on his nominee for ambassador to Israel. Mark Martin has the story.
President Donald Trump did not mince words as he met the media in the East Room of the White House.
I turn on the TV, open the newspapers, and I see stories of chaos. Chaos. Yet it is the exact opposite. This administration is running like a fine-tuned machine, despite the fact that I can't get my cabinet approved, and they're outstanding people.
The president covered a wide range of subjects, including more optimism among businesses since he took office, and the soaring stock market, executive orders that cut regulations, and a successful rollout of his nominee to the Supreme Court as proof things are running smoothly. The president also pushed back on media reports that his campaign advisors may have had inappropriate contacts with Russian officials. And he was not shy about expressing his frustration with what he called a dishonest media.
We have to talk about it to find out what's going on, because the press honestly is out of control. The level of dishonesty is out of control.
It appears most of America shares Trump's lack of confidence in the media. Only 32% of Americans say they have a great deal or fair amount of trust in the media, according to Gallup's annual confidence poll from last September. That's the lowest ever since Gallup started asking the question in 1972. Meanwhile, Trump's pick for U.S. ambassador to Israel had his confirmation hearing before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. It did not take long before bankruptcy lawyer David Friedman was interrupted by demonstrators, including this one opposing Israeli settlements.
Mr. Friedman also said that Palestinian refugees don't have a claim to the land, don't have a connection to Palestine, when in fact they do.
When he wasn't interrupted, Friedman did answer a question about settlements and a two-state solution, giving the Palestinians their own nation side by side with Israel.
You, of course, have been involved in supporting settlements and in conversations that seem to imply that the two-state solution is no longer a viable option. What do you mean by that?
Senator, if the Israelis and the Palestinians were able, through direct negotiations, to achieve a two-state solution along parameters agreeable to them, and the Prime Minister of Israel yesterday outlined some of them, I would be delighted.
Still, Friedman acknowledged his doubts.
I have expressed my skepticism about the two-state solution solely on the basis of what I've perceived as an unwillingness on the part of the Palestinians to renounce terror and accept Israel as a Jewish state.
Mark Martin, CBN News.
Well, our CBN News political correspondent David Brody is with us from Washington. David, it was quite a show yesterday in the president's press conference. What's your take on it?
Well, I'm just frustrated that I didn't bring popcorn because that was popcorn munching, Gordon, for sure. I mean, look, the way this went down at the White House was pretty fascinating. Donald Trump walked in the morning on a Thursday and looked at everybody and said, let's do a press conference today. And then, boom, everybody started running and trying to figure out, well, let's get some seats in the East Room of the White House. I mean, it was that chaotic, if you will, because, look, all along, Gordon, as you know, Donald Trump is his best press secretary. It's himself. And so it's been pretty fascinating to watch the media's reaction to all of this. They're clearly thinking it's a combustible situation. They feel that he was unhinged. We've heard these words. But, boy, to his base, I mean, he was channeling his base yesterday. There was no doubt about it. It wasn't even like he was at the East Room of the White House. It was more that he was kind of hanging out with some Rust Belt factory workers, you know, after the whistle blows at 5 o'clock. I mean, it was just kind of very genuine. You know, one of the things, Gordon, that's interesting, here's a comparison for you. You know, Ronald Reagan was able to cut through the media with like a butter knife, if you will. Donald Trump cuts through the media, I think, more like with a chainsaw. But the point is still the same. He's able to kind of cut through the media clutter and really be very genuine. Love him or hate him, he's genuine for sure.
He is genuine, and yeah, love him or hate him. It seems like it's dividing, though. And, you know, he seemed to take on CNN, and you kind of wonder, are they just laughing all the way to the bank? The head of CNN was predicting they're going to have $1 billion in profits for this calendar year, which is an astonishing number. At the same time, the polls are showing that nobody trusts the media anymore. Does it seem to matter?
Well, I think it matters to Donald Trump, and here's why. Because he knows that he can get away with what he did yesterday because the public overall has his back. Even the ones that don't necessarily support Donald Trump actually don't support the media. In other words, if Donald Trump has a 50% approval rating, well, the media, as you just pointed out, far less than that. So if you run the math, Donald Trump believes he's got the wind at his back, specifically as it relates to his approval versus the media's approval.
Do you view this as the start of the campaign season, if you will, for the midterm elections? Was this a campaign event?
Yeah, I think you can. That's actually a very astute observation. I agree with you on that. I think it is somewhat of a campaign event because it was in his wheelhouse. This is where he likes to operate. And now we find out, or we know, that he's going to Florida this weekend where he'll have a big campaign rally. And here we go, just about a month into his campaign or his presidency, and he's already holding campaign rally events, which, by the way, I thought it was interesting at the press conference on Thursday. He said those crowds, he understands, are already going to be huge. So he had to already talk about the crowd size before the crowds even gathered. So I thought that was somewhat interesting.
All right, well, let's turn to the policy. It looks like he's going ahead with a new immigration order. Do you have any insight on what's going to be in the order?
Well, the White House realizes that they need to in essence, tailor it, and that's the word he used yesterday, tailor this executive order because of that Ninth Circuit decision. So what they look to probably be doing here, and once again, not all I's are dotted and T's are crossed, but most likely including some non-Muslim countries to the executive order. And that's why Donald Trump said yesterday, he said it actually might be even better than the original executive order because apparently there's going to be some additional countries added. So look for that, and also look for some of those permanent green card residents, if you will, to make sure that they're not excluded from the travel, or make sure that they will be allowed to travel and not be part of that travel ban.
Well, it looks like David Friedman is going to be confirmed as ambassador. The votes seem to be there. Any insight on what's going to happen as a result of this? Are we going to see any kind of deal between Israel and the Palestinians? Are we going to see the embassy move to Tel Aviv? What's your prediction?
Well, this is how do we say this? It's a big gray area, and here's why. Donald Trump, have you heard, he's the art of the deal, right? I mean, he talks about it all the time, and part of the deal-making process here is not to reveal your hand. And so what we have here is, does the White House, deep down, Donald Trump and some of his advisors like Bannon and Friedman, do they want to move the embassy to Jerusalem? Absolutely they do. I don't think there's a question about it. But can they reveal that publicly right now? No, it's part of the art of the deal. They've got to figure out the best way. That's why the other day, Donald Trump looked at Benjamin Netanyahu in front of all of the world, all of those cameras, and said, I'd like you to hold off on the settlements. Once again, trying to figure out the sweet spot, if you will, of some sort of deal. So that's the gray area. But look, Friedman is a guy that is not for a two-state solution. Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jewish, is a big pro-Israel guy, but might be a little bit more into negotiation when it comes to a two-state solution. So there's a couple competing interests there. And Donald Trump, just as he even said himself, wants the best deal possible. But he's got Netanyahu's back, and that's a good thing from Israel's standpoint.
David, I've got to ask this. You've become a celebrity at these press conferences.
I'll tell my wife that.
You won't get any respect at home. I know that. But are you getting any flack behind the scenes from the White House press corps?
Well, it's interesting you asked me that, Gordon, because when I asked that first question the other day at the Netanyahu-Trump press conference, many of the mainstream media members who I know, Jim Acosta, CNN, Peter Alexander, some of these other folks from NBC, I know them. I've been out on the campaign trail. There were some death stares at me. When I say death stares, I'm putting those in air quotes. The point is that they were not happy. They were not happy that CBN was asking not only the first question, but a question, and they didn't get one during a very important press conference. So, yeah, there's been some pushback, I think, more with, if you want to call it the silent treatment, from folks that I've known. So it's been interesting, Gordon, but that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, well, you're up for the challenge. I do know it seems like the White House press corps has always been an alpha male environment, so get ready for more death stares. Okay. All right. David, thanks for being with us, and stay strong.
Thanks, Gordon.
In other news, Indonesia's commitment to democracy and religious tolerance may be at stake as voters in Jakarta choose their next governor. The current governor is up for re-election. He's a Christian who is still on trial for allegedly committing blasphemy against Islam. Our Asia correspondent Lucille Talusan brings us that story.
Jakarta's incumbent governor, Basuki Cahayapurnama, popularly known as Ahok, was among the early voters in the gubernatorial election. The governor is currently on trial for allegedly insulting Islam, and some Indonesians believe that may cause him to lose this election. But his supporters say his record of good governance may lead to victory regardless of the charges against him. Bonnie Hargens is a Muslim political analyst.
Ahok is one of the best governors Jakarta has ever had. Ahok has no problem with the Muslims. And the Muslims are moderate, the Muslims are rational, the Muslims are compatible with democracy. But the hardliners are rejecting the idea of democracy.
Christians believe Ahok is an answer to prayer in the world's most populous Muslim country.
This has been going on now for almost 30 years, this momentum of prayer for Indonesia and for its government. And I see the rise of Basuki Cahayapurnama, a God-ordained leader being raised up, fearless in integrity, focused on being a transparent, godly leader.
McClendon says if Ahok becomes the freely elected governor of Jakarta, this can open the way for a double minority, Ahok being Christian and Chinese, to be president of Indonesia in the future.
He says, why can't I become president? I'm Indonesian, just like everybody else. And so that path would be open to him if he becomes the freely elected governor of Jakarta.
All religion is the same, have the same right and responsibility in this nation. And actually, we are educated by our parents to love this nation and really to do the best for this nation. So we love the Muslim and the Muslim love us.
The winning candidate must receive more than 50% of the vote. The final election results are expected within 3 weeks. If the votes of the winners are less than 50%, a second round between the top two candidates will be held in April.
The people here at the Ahok headquarters are very ecstatic because their candidate is leading in the quick count. If Ahok wins, this is a strong indication that Indonesia is a country that is run by democratic principles and not by religion and ethnicity.
And even if he loses, the public will still look at Ahok's good performance as a work barometer for whoever succeeds him. Lucille Talusan, CBN News, Jakarta.
Well, this is an incredible story, and we've been covering it ever since he was charged with blasphemy. If he's able to win this election, that will be a watershed event in the largest Muslim country by population and by land area in the world. And what a great thing that would be, and how it would ring the bell for democracy being possible in a Muslim majority country. At the same time, he's still facing a blasphemy trial where he could spend 5 years in jail. So we're going to cover it, and we're going to keep you informed, and please be praying for the democracy of Indonesia.